Now there are several kinds of sequences that happen over and over again. There are four main types, and every one of those breaks down into two versions. There's the root position version, and then there's the alternating 6/3 version, which doesn't change the roots or anything like that, but it changes the bass line by inverting chords within the pattern. It's good to know too that the pattern always consists of two chords within it. That primes the pump and just gets you set with a certain expectation when you're listening and when you're looking at a score. So let's take a look at these four main kinds. There are four main kinds of sequences, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've divided them out into two that are descending and two that ascend. I'm going to give you the conventional label, it's the shorthand, the thing that everybody uses to describe it, because it's a mouthful to give all the detail. And then we'll see the interval of restatement. So these are these three parts to our complete label. 1, the interval of restatement, how I get from statement to statement. 2, the root motion, which we do this to, just to separate it visually from the interval of restatement. And then we show what variant it is. Now, most people would just leave it blank, I think, if it's root position, although there are many people doing various things. You can write root position or you can leave it blank either way. Either one will let me know. And then you can write alternating 6/3, or for short you can just write 6/3, and I'll know that every other chord is a 6/3 position chord. Remember, if every chord is a 6/3, they come in pairs, remember. So if both chords within that pattern is in first inversion, write 6/3 and 6/3 both, and then I'll know. We'll be on the same wavelength. Okay, so the complete label has these three parts to it, these three columns, and now we're going to also get to know the conventional term. Let's just give a quick overview for this. If it's a descending sequence, so let's say you're identifying the sequence and you hear that it's going down, you are down to two basic kinds of sequences here. It's either descending fifths or descending thirds. We looked at descending thirds just a moment ago with the mazurka and with the Mascagni piece. So let me start with it, even though it's second. Descending thirds, the conventional term gives you the interval of restatement. So the full label is down 3 by going down a fourth up a step. And there are two versions of it over here, the root position and then the alternating 6/3 version. You can see the bass line that I was playing for you earlier. It's kind of jagged, goes down a fourth up a step. We know that from Pachelbel's canon. Anyone who's done weddings knows it way too well. Here's the alternating 6/3 where it smooths over that bass line, making it completely stepwise. Taking the G, replacing it with the chordal third gives you B, and so you get C, B, A, completely stepwise down for the sequential part. So I've given you the bass lines here. Let's say you're listening to a descending sequence and you hear a mix of steps and leaps. Well, that could be this one, but it also could be this one. So you see how knowing the bass line can narrow it down. Other times, just hearing the bass line will tell you exactly what it is. So if I hear descending, stepwise descent in the bass, there's only one sequence out of this bunch that does that, and it's this one. So in some cases, knowing the bass line will tell you exactly what sequence it is, and you're done. Now it's true that there are some ways that I could do another kind of sequence that has this bass line. There's one that has it's a descending fifths, and it's using inversions in a funky way to get a descending line. So you can't just stop right there, but as a general rule, it'll get you in the ballpark in a hurry just to hear that descending line. Okay, so bass lines can help you identify sequences more quickly, and that's why I've included them here. Let's look now at descending fifths. The conventional term is descending fifths, and notice where they get that label. It's actually the root motion right there that gives it its label. So here, let's take a look at the bass line and we'll work backwards. This is root position, so we're getting every root as a bass note. The pattern will group chords into twos, like so. And it actually goes all the way through here. This tells me interval restatement is going to be down a second. Is that true? C, F, B, E. Yeah, these two things end up down a step in the second statement. The root motion goes down a fifth and then up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth. And because the bass line contains the roots, we're seeing that root motion in this bass line. Now if we do alternating 6/3s, we're going to take that F, we're going to take the E, every other chord, and we're going to replace it with the chordal third. So F is replaced by a third higher, A. The E replaced by a G, and so on. So now instead of these big leaps every time, fifth, fourth, we're getting leap, step, leap, step. Again, it has the effect of smoothing it over a bit, making it more stepwise than it had been. And then it breaks off here. Okay, so still down a second. That's unchanged. And the root motion is still going to be down 5, up 4, but the alternating 6/3 changes the bass line significantly. Okay, so let me give you a quick listening strategy. I hear it, first of all, as either ascending or descending. That puts me, let's say it's descending, that puts me in one of these camps, you see, and limits it down to just two main choices. As soon as I hear that it's descending, I know it's either descending fifths or descending thirds. One of those two kinds. Then, listen to the particulars of it. Is it leaping all the time? There's only one of these bass lines that leaps all the time, and it's this one right here. So if I hear constant big leaps going on, it's the descending fifth sequence, or to give it the full label, it's the descending seconds by descending fifths and ascending fourths sequence in root position. Now if I hear it all steps the whole way in the bass, I'm dealing with the descending thirds alternating 6/3, or for short I just say descending thirds 6/3 variant. This one, it's the only one that goes by step. Alright, now if I hear a mix of leaps and steps, then I'm going to have to distinguish between this one, the descending fifth 6/3 variant, and the descending thirds in root position. They both go leap, step, and they both have that same contour of going down by a leap and then stepping up. That's not so bad though, because this is the Pachelbel's canon bass line, and this one is just down a third, up a step. So just knowing the Pachelbel canon well can help you distinguish between the two. Your question is, okay, now that I've heard that it's a mix of leaps and steps, does it sound like Pachelbel canon? And if it is, you say descending thirds, root position. If it's not, then you'll say, okay, well, it's descending fifths with 6/3 variant. One little warning before I leave descending sequences and their labels. The conventional terms are drawn from different things. Here, with descending fifths, you're drawing from the root motion. But with descending thirds, you're giving the interval of restatement. Now, I think it's pretty clear why that happened. If you're looking to name a sequence by an interval that marks it, well, descending fifths, you got the pattern right away. Just by going chord to chord to chord to chord, you see descending fifths. You hear descending fifths right off. Now, when you're thinking about descending thirds, you have to find a regularly recurring pattern, you're going to have to go beyond just chord by chord. Because, see, it's going to change. You're going to have down a fourth, up a step, down a fourth, up a step, and that's a mouthful. So the way to have a nice consistent label on this is to say, well, the consistency comes when you look at the fact that it keeps coming back a third lower. but that requires skipping a chord. So the label comes here from the interval of restatement. That's where you start experiencing the regularity. Okay, so regularity comes with the root motion here and only appears with the interval of restatement here with descending thirds. I think that's why the conventional term is drawn as it is from different things. Okay, quickly about ascending. We're gonna look at each of these individually with some examples. So the main thing is that you get the scheme of this page and can use it to orient yourself. Let me follow up with this listening strategy though and relating it to the bass line for these different sequences that ascend now. All right, again, you're listening or you're looking at a piece of music and you notice that it's ascending. It's sequential and it's ascending. Okay, well that limits you down to two main kinds. This ascending 5/6, some people call it, or ascending second sequence. We'll look at that in more detail. Or it could be the ascending fifths. And you've got to find a way to distinguish between the two. Let me start with ascending fifths because it's just the inverse of this descending fifth. Notice the big leaps, but now they go up. Up a fifth, down a fourth, up a fifth, down a fourth. The descending fifths went down a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth. So this is just flipping it all over, reversing the direction of those intervals. This then also, like descending fifths, has big leaps all the time. And it's the biggest intervals you're going to get in any of these. We'll compare it with another one though, up here that also has all leaps all the time. All right, so that's the root position version here. If we look at what happens when we vary it by putting 6/3 in there, we'll get a step leap, down a second, up a third in the bass line. If you hear that pattern, it's ascending fifths, the 6/3 variant. Look at the complete label now. So the first part's going to be the interval of restatement. That says to me, I'm going to move to get from statement to statement. Remember, they come in pairs. Chords come in pairs to form statements. When I move from this one to that, I've moved up a second. That's why we have an up 2 there. This gives us the root motion. Up 5, down 4, up 5, down 4. And leaving it blank or writing root position says, hey, the roots are in the bass. Okay, now all this stays the same for this. The only thing that changes is this last bit. It's a variant because of that change we just talked about. Still, you're going up seconds. Still the root motion. C goes to G, goes to D. Same. You're just changing the inversion of every other chord. Okay, and then one last one. We've got ascending seconds. I usually call it this. Let's do this and then we'll see how we get these two different labels out of it. So we'll start with the complete label. Here's a pattern. 2-chord pattern, moved, in this case, up. Okay, well that's the same. Both of these move up then by second. That's the same. Here's where they differ. This one goes down a third, up a fourth, down a third, up a fourth. If any of you have sung Handel's Messiah or any Handel loves this sequence. He loves the ascending seconds root position. Here's how he gets up a second. He goes down a third, up a fourth, and when you vary that by putting in the 6/3s, you get a very smooth ascent. Remember how we had a smooth ascent here for descending thirds? Now we're getting it with seconds, but look what's happening. You keep the same bass, keep the same bass, keep the same bass before you move on. So now I think you can understand with a little thought how this ascending 5/6 becomes a shorthand or a conventional label for this sequence. If you call it this, ascending 5/6, you're taking this as your main model for how the sequence works. And if you just went up in mass, in parallel, you'd have, I always hear the same tune. Yeah, it sounds very popish to do that. You got all these parallel fifths going on. So to break them up, you do a sixth in place of the fifth, and then you can move up to the next scale degree. Move up a second. It's kind of crab-like in that you're always kind of wiggling your way up. And then with that kind of person who says, hey, it's a voice leading procedure. I'm just getting a way to do this. If you think of it as a voice leading procedure that's eliminating fifths, that becomes your main model. And then the other says, okay, I'm not just going to use the A here, but I'm going to put it in my bass too, so that it becomes a root now, and do this sort of thing. And now I've got, what we're thinking is the root position, the model, and they think of it though as the variant, really. So at its most clean and essential, that kind of person, the person who calls it ascending 5/6, would say, it's this. That's the clean, normal version, and this is really a variant of it. We're thinking of it just the reverse. We're thinking, okay, this is how the sequence works. It ascends by second, yes, but it's this root motion that does the job. And then we base this one off of it by inverting every other chord. It's just a different perspective. So I hope you can see how you can think of it as a voice leading procedure, a fifth changing to a sixth, in order to move up a second. But you could also think of it as mainly about root motion, ascending seconds overall, and using this root motion to do it. Either way is fine. So you can use either term you like as a shorthand for this. Okay, now let's go back to our theme here, which is you can use the bass line to identify the sequence. Let's say you heard all steps, only steps, all the time in the bass. Now we're assuming that we heard it ascending in the first place. So first thing is you hear that it's ascending, but then you hear that it's all steps all the time. There's only one that does that, and that's the ascending seconds, the 5-6 variant. Now I know if I wanted to be consistent, I'd say alternating 6/3s here. But because some people think of it and call it the ascending 5/6, we're going to connect with their terminology a little bit by adjusting ours a little bit and call this the ascending seconds 5-6 variant instead of the ascending seconds alternating 6/3 variant, or just 6/3 variant. Okay, so we'll go ahead and use that instead of 6/3, just to connect with those folks. Okay, so this is the bass line that goes only by step. These others all have at least a leap in there somewhere. Now there's one that mixes it up. It's got leaps and steps. That's this one. Da, 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 da. That's the ascending fifths, the 6/3 variant. Now what if it's all leaps all the time? Remember, there are two that do that. The ascending fifths, root position, does it with big leaps. Da, 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 da. Big leaps all the time. The other one that does it is ascending seconds, the root position version of it. Notice that it goes down, da, 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 da. It always goes down a third, and then that serves as a springboard for going up a fourth. Da, 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 da. So you'll have to take some time to really parse those two out and understand how they differ from one another. But again, you've got just a few options as long as you first listen for what direction it goes and then start getting to know the bass lines that go with it. That's how I identify them by ear fastest, is if I pay attention to the bass line first. And also you can use that for identifying by eye. You hear that there's a sequence there, look at it and go, oh, there's the bass line and it does X, and that only one of the sequences does that. The handy thing is that every one of these bass lines is unique to a particular sequence. There are some tricky ones in there, and we came across that with the very first one I mentioned, which is the one that goes down by step. But by far, the most common one appears here on your sheet. Another good thing is that our descriptive label, the complete label, can handle any sequence, even if it's in that 5% that don't fit into these categories. But if you just spend the time to get to know these 4 main types of sequences, you have the vast majority of the sequences. You've got labels for the vast majority, and you're understanding a huge chunk of music. There's a lot of music does this kind of thing. It moves by sequence.